A gentle golden glow was cast over the rolling hills of Beverly Hills by the sun as it hung low over the horizon. Despite the fact that Taylor Hayes had spent the most of her life in and out of the city, experiencing both its highs and lows, she felt something unusual today. Her heart was being tormented by an unavoidable feeling of disquiet that she could not deny. Her phone, which was sitting on the passenger seat next to her, began to buzz and lit up with yet another message from Ridge. With a sigh, she decided to disregard it for the time being. Not that she did not love Ridge, of course she did. It was just that she did. Unquestionably, the relationship was present. On the other hand, ever since Brooke had returned to the scene, and to be honest, when had she not been there? The relationship between her and Ridge had once again been tense. It was the unending triangle that appeared to be a constant presence in her life. The day, however, was not about Ridge. Is it Brooke? Today was about something completely else, something that she had not in any way expected happening. Veronica Hayes, Taylor's cousin, took the initiative to communicate with her after a prolonged period of silence. Taylor had hidden a significant portion of her life for many years, and Veronica was a profound connection to that part of her life. Veronica was more than simply a member of the family. Throughout their childhood, they had been inseparable. On the other hand, Taylor was the responsible one, destined to become a world-renowned psychiatrist and mother to a difficult and beautiful family. Veronica was the wild one, always testing the boundaries, while Taylor was the one who was responsible. But as life continued to take its unavoidable turns and twists, they had lost communication with one another. A straightforward yet impactful message had been sent by Veronica, which said, "I need to see you." Yes, it is essential. At its core, it is all about the family. During the time that Taylor was driving the meandering roads that led to Veronica's estate, the message played over and over again in her head. As a result of all these years, what could possibly be so significant now? Why had Veronica waited for such a long time to make contact with you? A peculiar mixture of interest and terror was something that Taylor couldn't help but feel. After arriving at the entrance to Veronica's huge estate, she paused for a few minutes before approaching the gate. Her mind was inundated with recollections of their past together, including the times they had fought, laughed, and spent the nights together discussing their aspirations and their ambitions for the future. At that time, everything appeared to be so straightforward. But as time passes, everything shifts, and individuals become more distant from one another. Taylor composed herself, pressed the button for the intercom, and waited for the gates to open so that she could proceed. A change in the atmosphere was something that she became aware of as she exited her vehicle and made her way towards the magnificent front entrance. Something about this place was unusual. Not only was it the property, which was an extravagant estate that was a long cry from the straightforwardness of their boyhood, but it was also the aura around them. It weighed heavily, laden with secrets that were not expressed. Veronica was standing there, and she was exactly as lovely as Taylor had recalled her to be. The door opened with a groan. Her cousin had been blessed by the passage of time, but she appeared to be experiencing a fatigue in her eyes and a weight in her posture that had not been present before. "Taylor," Veronica said, her voice suggesting that she was unable to conceal the feelings that she had been trying so hard to conceal. "I couldn't be happier that you came." When the cousins hugged each other, the years of separation seemed to melt away, even if only for a brief instant. Taylor said, "I couldn't ignore your message," while taking a tiny step back to examine Veronica's face at the same time. "You mentioned that it was significant. What exactly is going on?" There was a hint of a smile on Veronica's face, but it did not reach her eyes. "Please come inside. There is a great deal that we can discuss." The interior of Veronica's house was just as extravagant as Taylor had anticipated it to be. It included marble flooring, windows that reached from floor to ceiling and framed the hills in the area, and art pieces that most likely cost more than Taylor could have ever imagined. However, in spite of its majesty, the area was characterized by an unmistakable freezing temperature. As she followed Veronica, she entered a warm and inviting sitting area where a fire was crackling softly in the fireplace. In direct contrast to the tension that was there in the room, the warmth of the fire was present. Taylor took a seat, her thoughts racing with a plethora of inquiries. Before finally taking a seat across from Taylor, Veronica poured a glass of wine for both of them from the bottle. In what appeared to be an effort to prepare herself for the upcoming conversation, she took a deep breath. "I am aware that I have been estranged," Veronica continued, her voice still composed, "and I am indebted to you for that," she said. "But there is something that I have been carrying around with me for a considerable amount of time, something that I was not aware of how to deal with. I was under the impression that I could handle everything on my own, but I can't do that longer." Although her heart was beating, Taylor leaned forward ever so slightly. "Veronica, what exactly is it? It's terrifying to see you." As tears began to well up in Veronica's eyes, she hastily wiped them away with her clean hand. "Our family is the focus of this. I have been keeping something from you for many years, and it is something that you are unaware of." The thoughts in Taylor's head were racing. Is it even possible that Veronica has been keeping something from us all this time? Even in the midst of the difficulties they had encountered, their family had consistently been a source of solace and support for them. Nevertheless, as Taylor continued to examine Veronica's face, she became aware that her cousin was about to reveal something that would completely alter the course of events. Veronica continued, her voice shaking as she said, "I don't know how else to come to this conclusion. However, your father, Jack Hayes, was not the person you believe he was," the speaker said. Following what Veronica had just stated, Taylor's mind was having a hard time processing the information. "What exactly do you mean?" "My father's name was Jack. He was my father, and he adored me." With a look of deep regret on her face, Veronica gave a slight shake of her head. "Of course, he adored you. On the other hand, he was not your biological father." As if they were a blow to her body, the words struck Taylor. She experienced a sensation of the room spinning around her as she struggled to take a breath. "Why are you bringing up such a point? Indeed, that is not feasible." "Taylor, I am so sorry," Veronica mumbled over her shoulder. "But that is the case. This is something that I really didn't want to tell you, but I just couldn't keep it a secret from you any longer. Her mother, she was involved in an affair. Also, your biological father is not the same person." The ramifications of Veronica's remarks began to sink in, and Taylor's head began to spin in a panic. The entirety of her existence, including all she had previously believed about her family, was now called into question. To who did she actually belong? If she had been kept in the dark for such a long time, what was the reason? When Taylor spoke, her voice was hardly audible above a whisper. "I don't understand," she muttered. "I don't understand why my mother would keep this information from me. Do you know why you didn't tell me earlier?" The shoulders of Veronica sagged in resignation as she let out a sigh. "Despite my desire to do so, I was unable to do so. I made a solemn vow to your mother that I would keep it a secret. She believed that if the truth were to come out, it would be devastating to your family." Taylor gave a slight shake of her head as tears began to form in her eyes. "It is impossible for this to take place. The truth is that I have no idea who I am now." On the other side of the table, Veronica reached out and took Taylor's hand in her own. "Taylor, you have not changed at all during this time. You are not altered in any way by this action, but I was aware that you deserved to be informed of the truth, even if it caused you discomfort." Without further ado, Taylor abruptly stood up and snatched her hand away. She was unable to remain still for much longer. She had the impression that the walls of the room were closing in on her, crushing her with the weight of the information that she had just learned. "Who exactly is he?" In a tone that was a combination of rage and despair, Taylor demanded, her voice rising dramatically. "Who is my biological father?" A look of remorse could be seen in Veronica's eyes as she hesitated. "I'm not sure," she said. "I was never informed of his name by your mother. I am aware, however, that she was crazy about him." Taylor's pulse was pounding in her chest as she attempted to make sense of the bombshell that had been delivered. How was she supposed to discover who her biological father was if even Veronica was unaware of the situation? What sort of implications would this have for her relationship with her children, her professional life, and her life in general going forward? For Taylor, The days that followed were a haze of confusion and anguish in her heart. She had the impression that she was a stranger in her own life, as if everything she had put her faith in regarding herself had been a deception. In addition to her inability to concentrate on her career, she also experienced difficulty in her interactions with her children. When she didn't even know who she was anymore, how could she be the kind of mother who offered them the kind of support and strength they required? Naturally, Ridge was aware that there was a problem with the situation. He had always been insightful when it came to Taylor, even during the periods when their relationship was tumultuous. He had consistently shown this trait. Taylor, however, was not quite prepared to confide in him at this time. Having to sort this out on her own was something that she needed to do. Instead, she devoted herself to investigating her background, since she was adamant about finding out the truth about her biological father. In addition to looking through ancient family papers and making contact with distant cousins, she even considered employing the services of a private detective. However, regardless of how diligently she searched, she continued to come up with dead ends. It had been several years since her mother had passed away, and she had taken her secrets with her to the grave. Moreover, Jack, the one who had brought her up as his own child, had also left. She was left without anyone who could provide her with the answers that she so urgently required. In contrast, Taylor was the epitome of a dogged individual. She was confident that the truth was accessible to her in some form or another, and she was not going to give up until she discovered it. An unexpected guest showed up at Taylor's house one evening, after she had spent weeks seeking without any success. Yes, it was Veronica. When Taylor opened the door, Veronica immediately responded by saying, "I am aware that you are upset with me, and I can comprehend just why. However, I have been conducting some independent research, and I believe that I have discovered something." A small flutter occurred in Taylor's heart. Who or what is it? She received a little envelope that had been weathered by Veronica. "A letter that your mother sent to me many years ago, right before she passed away, is what I have here. A long-forgotten box containing my belongings was where I discovered it. I have a feeling that it might have the answers that you are seeking for." In the process of opening the envelope, Taylor's hands shook slightly when she gained possession of it. Although it was only a brief letter, the contents of the letter sent a shockwave through her throughout her body. "You, Veronica, it is imperative that you make a commitment to me. You are obligated to tell Taylor the truth in the event that anything ever occurs to me. She has a right to know the identity of her biological father. What is his name?" As she read the name, Taylor's eyes grew wide with excitement. It turned out to be someone she had never anticipated, someone who had been a part of her life for years without her ever being aware of the relationship between them. It was none other than Eric Forrester, who was found to be her real father. As soon as Taylor found out that Eric Forrester was her biological father, her entire life went into a complete and utter turmoil. Eric, who had been a friend and a guide to her throughout the years, had been an important presence in her life for many years. Throughout her life, he had been a father figure to her children, particularly Steffi, and he had never failed to be there for her whenever she required assistance. The concept that he was her biological father, on the other hand, was nearly too much for her to comprehend. During the days that followed, Taylor struggled to come to terms with the revelation, unsure of how to approach Eric with the reality. Given the length of time that had passed, she was unable to reveal to him that he was her biological father. Also, how would this affect their relationship, which is already somewhat complicated? On the very moment that Eric entered the room, his friendly smile immediately put her at ease, despite the fact that her worries were on the verge of taking over. Then he welcomed her with a friendly "Taylor, every time I see you, it's a pleasure. How are you feeling right now?" Taylor, in preparation for what she was about to say, took a deep breath and steadied herself physically. "I have something important to discuss with you, Eric. The one thing that is going to completely transform everything." As Eric listened, his countenance became more serious as he became aware of the significance of what she was saying. "Just recently, I came to the realization that you are my biological father." As Eric went through the process of processing what Taylor had just said, there was a brief period of silence in the building. His eyes widened in surprise, and he slid into the chair that was closest to him, so obviously he was taken aback by the information. "Taylor, I am at a loss for words," Eric eventually managed to remark, his voice husky with the intensity he was experiencing. "I was completely unaware of it. I never even had a suspicion." As tears began to rise up in her eyes, Taylor nodded her head. "Like you, I was unaware of it. On the other hand, my mother had an affair, and it has come to light that you are an actual father to me." Eric got to his feet and walked across the room to take a position in front of Taylor. He extended his hand and took both of her hands in his. "The way I feel about you has not changed, despite the fact that this has changed a great deal. You, Taylor, have always been someone I have cared about, and I have always considered you to be a member of my family. We are now aware that you are a member of my family." As Taylor embraced Eric, she was overcome with the feelings that she was experiencing at that very moment. Tears flowed down her face. In spite of the fact that the revelation had shocked her to her very core, she was eventually able to feel a feeling of serenity when she was in Eric's arms. At the same time that she had discovered her truth, she had also discovered a new sense of belonging in her life. Over the course of the subsequent weeks, Taylor and Eric gradually started to figure out how to navigate their new relationship. It was not always simple. There were a lot of deep feelings that needed to be untangled, and the dynamics of their family were more convoluted than they had ever been before. But despite everything that happened, they never wavered in their determination to strengthen their relationship as father and daughter. In addition, Taylor disclosed the truth to Ridge, and although he was initially taken aback by it, he ultimately showed his support for Taylor. Ridge had always had a great deal of respect for Eric, and the fact that he was Taylor's biological father only served to increase his admiration for the one who had played such a significant role in making both of their lives what they were today. In the case of Veronica, the revelation had caused tension in her relationship with Taylor. Nevertheless, as time went on, the two of them started to mend their relationship. It was clear to Taylor that Veronica had been in a precarious situation, torn between her love for her cousin and her allegiance to her aunt. However, in the end, Taylor decided to forgive her because she was aware that Veronica had only been attempting to safeguard her. The Forrester family was likewise affected by the discovery that Eric was her biological father. This revelation caused ripples throughout the family. Although Steffi and Thomas were both taken aback by the news, they were eager to have Eric become their grandfather and welcomed him into their lives with open arms. The event marked the beginning of a fresh chapter in the history of their family, one that was replete with affection and acceptance. When Taylor was visiting the Forrester mansion for a family gathering, she felt a sense of pleasure that she hadn't had in many years. She looked around the room and noticed that everyone was happy. Her journey through life had been full of unexpected turns and twists, but in the end, she had discovered her place in the world, her family, and the truth about herself. And when she watched Eric laugh with her children, she knew that no matter what difficulties lied ahead, they would tackle them together as a family. She knew this because she had seen Eric laughing with her children.